everybody. How you doing? This is Ricky Schoonover with 8Z Real Estate, your local Denver realtor. And you are tuned in to this month's podcast, the Denver Homes Market Report, Denver's monthly real estate podcast. So thank you for tuning in. Last month, we talked a little bit to my sellers. We were talking about merchandising. We were talking about those first impressions. We were talking about curb appeal. We were talking about doing real estate. We were talking about how, the sellers had reigned supreme since 2014 all the way up to about 2024. We had a good decade there where sellers were in their driver's seat. And now in 2025, I started out in January. Hey, I think we're headed towards a buyer's market. The inventory is growing a little bit. Days on market are growing a little bit. Prices are starting to soften. And then midway through again, hey, we're in a buyer's market, or very close, right on the edge of a buyer's market here. And then moving into August, we are in a buyer's market. Now the inventory is up. That spring market never really sprung. And so now we are in a buyer's market. And then in September, I think it was, I was like, hey, if you didn't get the last year of podcasts, we're in a buyer's market. So I started feeling like I was maybe neglecting my sellers out there a little bit. My sellers like, gosh, he just keeps talking about buyer's market. I guess I'm toast. I can't even sell my property anymore. So I had to get on last month and say, hey, I hear you out there, sellers. And no, it's not destitute. We are not despair. We just have to do things properly. And what we talked about was the main thing was curb appeal, right? Controlling the things that we can control. We can't control the neighborhood noise to much degree. If you're on a busy street, you're on a busy street. One time when I purchased a property, it was on kind of a busy street over on 29th and Julian, and I wasn't licensed here yet. I've been here for about a decade now, but I wasn't licensed when I moved here, and I was relying on a realtor as you do. And I was like, this is kind of a busy street here on 29th. And he said something really cool to me. He's like, he goes, there are some streets that are busier and there are some streets that are less busy. And you just got to kind of pick out what's okay for you. And that resonated with me. I was like, it's absolutely right. There's always going to be a busier street, unless you're on a highway or something, they don't get any busier. But anyway, we talked a little bit about the things that you control last month and things you can't control. And the things that we can control are we can make sure that when you walk in, the house has the proper temperature. Nothing is plugged in or no candles are burning. That's going to be overpowering. You don't want any overpowering smells because that may be an indication that someone's trying to hide something from that, any weird smells. So you don't want that. And you want to make sure all your maintenance is up to date on your HVAC system, your water heater, things like that. Knowing the age of your roof is helpful, things of that nature. And then just really talking about how when a buyer walks up, it needs to be showtime, right? You may only get 1 or 2 showings right now a week. You may only have 1 or 2 potential buyers that come to your home that may want to buy it. So no matter how beautiful the home is, if no one's looking at it, it doesn't matter how beautiful it is because you're not going to sell it if no one's looking at it. They have to come look at it to purchase the home in like 99.9% of the cases. I mean, there are some homes that are sold sight unseen, but there's usually a reason they're sold sight unseen, and that is the price is really, really low, and it's going to entice them to do that. It's probably some sort of a flip or an investment property, things like that. But for the most case, if you want full market value, someone's, for the most part, usually they're going to come walk through the home before they put in that offer. So you want to treat that with respect. You want everything to look right when they walk in, right when they come to the curb appeal, right when they walk in the home. They pull that doorknob open, or their realtor pulls that doorknob open. They walk in. They said, yes, this is the home for me. This is it. And then they're going to walk around and they're going to reinforce all those positive connotations, right? Everything they look at, they're going to be like, oh, there's the office space I need. Oh, there's the large table I need for my holiday gatherings. We just passed Thanksgiving. We have holiday gatherings so we need a bigger table. So they're going to see everything in there that they like about the home, and that's going to reinforce that that's the home for them. That works in reverse too. If they walk up and there's dead leaves all over the front, the door's all scratched up, you got a cracked window on the side, and then they open up the door and the lighting's not right, maybe there's some Glade plug-in thingies in there and it really stinks, they're going to have an instant negative connotation, and then they're going to walk around the home and they're going to reinforce that. So that's what we talked a little bit about last month, was just making sure that your home is show ready for every showing. I know that gets frustrating, especially if they say they're going to show up and then they don't make it for whatever reason. That happens in this market probably more than even in the busier markets, where we make appointments and then for whatever reason the buyers don't make it there, or maybe they just drive by and they get in the neighborhood and they see that front door scratched up, or they see the dead plants out there and they're like, nope, this is not the house for me. And they just move on to another one. They have plenty of houses out there to see. There's big inventory. So your house has to look show ready every time. Treat each of those showings as, that is, lights, camera, action every single time. So that was what we talked about last month. So we're going to continue on with my sellers here this week or this month and talk a little bit more about selling your property, and something that kind of gives me a little pain in my heart. I had run across this person about 6 or 8 months ago. Let's call him Pat. So I reached out to Pat, or Pat reaches out to me. We cross paths, and they're like, yeah, we are thinking about selling our house, but we're not really sure what we'd get for it. Here's when we bought it, and they bought it a long time ago. And I was like, okay, well, let me do some numbers, and just do it online, and I'll send it to you. And if that sounds like something you want to move forward with from there, then we can schedule a formal walkthrough. So I did an initial search, which is really nothing more than almost like a Zestimate. It's a little better than a Zestimate. I'm going to physically go look at the listings online and everything. It's not as good as walking through. Going through for a walkthrough, I can learn so much more about the house than just doing something online. When you're online, you're really limited. I mean, that's why Zillow lost to $500 million or whatever it was in one quarter, because all they were really doing is looking at their estimates, which is kind of useless. There's so much more to the value of a property, and you have to visit the property to know the value. You can't do it all online. It's just not possible. You can't tell if it's the street noise out there. You can't tell if the neighborhood noise. You can't tell if there's any weird smells in the property. You don't know how old the roof is. You don't know when the HVAC system was last serviced, what condition it looks like, the sewer line, when that was cleaned out. There's so much more to the value of your home than a damn Zestimate. That's just go looking online and looking at the comps and being like, oh, okay, well, all these people sold for that much, so your home must be worth this. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot more to the value of your home that you have to take into consideration. And I can't get that information without visiting the home, physically walking around it, looking closely at the foundation, looking at the roof, asking you questions, walking in the home and seeing what the lighting feels like. There's a lot to the value of your home that you can't get from just looking online. It doesn't work. And so anyway, I sent her what I could do online. I said, really, this is just a guesstimate at this point. The next step is to invite me over to your home. Let me come do a walkthrough with you, and I'll have a much better idea of what your home will sell for. And this person says, okay, well, I'll call you next week. And next week rolls around, and I reached out to them. Oh, I'm not really ready yet. I'm trying to clean up this and fix up that. And I was like, I see all sorts of homes. I'll be able to look past a wall that's not painted, or some cabinets that aren't cleaned up, or whatever. I can look past all that and still give you the value as if those things were fixed. And there's still a little hesitancy there. And then 2 weeks later passed by, and I reached back out and I said, okay, yeah, I'm going to have you come over next week. Next week never happened again. And we just kind of lost touch at some point. And so then I got an alert this morning. We just finished up the Thanksgiving holiday. I got an alert that this person, Pat, was maybe thinking about selling the property again. So I jump in and I was like, okay, I'm just going to send them another CMA, another online thing, and let them know that I'm ready to do a walkthrough with them when they're ready. And so I went online, went into public records, looked up the address, looked up the buyer or seller, and unfortunately the house is now up for auction. So they had lost the property, maybe a tax lien, maybe a foreclosure, who knows? I don't really know what was going on, but I do know that there was a little bit of profit to be made in the summertime when I did the numbers. I don't know what the profit margin would have been now, but unfortunately, once it goes to foreclosure, I can't really reach out to them. I can't try to sell their home because it's already up for auction. And so that was kind of a bit of a downer today for me today, and it motivated me to jump on here today and get this podcast recorded. I was like, that's such a bummer. I was talking to my husband. I didn't tell him any personal information, but I talked to my husband and said, I had this person that I'd reached out to over the summer. I ran across him quite some time ago, reached out to him over the summer, did a quick CMA online sort of thing, tried to set up an appointment for a walkthrough. Kept in touch with them for weeks on end, and it wasn't. I didn't drop off. I kept trying to reach out to them, but they just stopped responding. And I do a system called HomeBot. So on HomeBot, it'll kind of do those online evaluations every month or so and send you out a report and that kind of thing. And I got an alert that maybe Pat was thinking about selling their home, and unfortunately now it's up for auction. So that's one thing I wanted to talk about today is, get me involved early, have me come over and do the walkthrough. Just because I go online and think your value is somewhere, I never tell somebody I can sell your house for this price based online. I don't even tell them I can sell your house even after I've seen the house, because I don't know. All I can say is I don't have a crystal ball, but based on all the data I have in front of me, I'm looking at the comparables. So I'm looking at properties that sold that are comparable to yours within the last few months. I'm looking at the competitive market. If we were on the market today, what the other houses are being listed at, and I can look at those numbers, and usually what's the comparable is a little bit lower. A lot of times people will list higher than what the comparables are, and they're not going to sell. They're going to have to lower their price. So that again comes down to that. Make sure you price it right from the day one, and don't try to do what they sold on the comparables. Don't try to do the competition. Try to be somewhere in the middle of the competition if you can. A little bit lower than the highest priced home, but maybe a little higher than the lowest priced home, depending on your condition. And maybe your home is in that condition where you have to price it a little lower. You have to be the lowest on the market to sell. Or maybe your home is a little nicer and you can go to the top of the market, but price accordingly. And that's why I say, get me involved early. Get me involved early. Let me come out and take a look at the home. Let me walk through it. Let me see what it smells like. Let me see what it looks like. Let me ask you all the hard questions about, the age of the roof, the HVAC system, the sewer system. When was it all last serviced? I can look at the flooring. I can look at everything in the house, and I'll have a much better idea when I'm then looking at the comps or looking at the competitive market to let you know where I think a reasonably educated buyer in this market would pay or offer on your home. And so that's just so important. And then I had another tragic sort of thing happen. Someone gave me a call over the holiday weekend and said, hey, I'm thinking about selling my property. So I, spoke to them for a few minutes and got some basic information and said, hey, I'm out camping right now in my van. So let me get back to you on Sunday at 5 o'clock. Is that good? And I will have all the research done, and I will be able to give you, at least an online evaluation. And I said, but really the next step is for us to schedule a walkthrough where I come visit the home and walk through the home. But let me get you some initial online stuff first. So last night had that phone call, and I was like, look, you bought it in 2022, you paid X amount for it. And, in 2022, the market was crazy. People were paying over the list price. And I said, do you remember what it was listed for? I can look on the MLS, but I wasn't on the MLS at the moment. I said, do you remember what it was listed for? And do you remember what you paid for it? Turns out they paid about $20,000 over the list price. And this is back in 2022. $20,000 or $25,000 over the list price when you bought it. The market has come down 5 or 10%. So, if the property, I'm not going to disclose the property, but if the property was sold worth $500,000 and you paid $525,000, and then the market has had a correction of 5 to 10%, and here we are at the end of 2025, we can first of all take off that 20,000 right away, so that's gone, and then we can minus the other 5 to 10,000. Let's just say 10. You take another 50, and so that brings that $500,000 home's value down to about 430,000 or so. So anyway, that was a little bit of an eye opener. I said, no, this is just a guesstimate at this point. I said, really, I have to come over and do a walkthrough with you, and we can get a better idea. But let me send you over the comparables. These are the ones that recently sold in the last few months that are kind of compared to your home based on what I can see online. And here's the competitives. These are the ones that if you were on the market today, these other homes are also on the market. So these are your direct competitors. And so I sent that over to him. He's going to look it over this week and then give me a call back for a walkthrough. But it didn't look like he was going to walk away with very much money unless his house really prices up at the top of that market. And until I do that walkthrough, I really won't know where it falls. But that is the message for you on this particular podcast. I appreciate you tuning in. Get me involved early. Get me involved early. That's what I can tell you. Don't think, oh, I'm not ready to call a realtor yet. Reach out to me. Let me at least do the online. Let's get your walkthrough scheduled, and then we can go from there. I'm not going to force you or pressure you to sell your home if it's not the right time for you. But I also don't want you to wait till you get to a point where it goes to auction or goes to foreclosure or you lose your job or whatever it is. If things like that are happening, usually when you're in your job, you can kind of get a sense, right? Either they're doing layoffs with other people. I remember my dad told me this a long time ago, way back. This is in the 80s. We went into a recession, and he said, son, I got to remember this off the top of my head. He said, son, when it's a recession, it's when your friends or neighbors are losing their job. When it's a depression is when it's your job that you've lost. And that really has kind of stuck with me over the years. When things are going on with other people, that maybe is the recession. And then when it hits home and you lose your job because he had lost his job, that's when you hit that depression point. So I really want to encourage you, even if it's not the number you're hoping for, even if you bought it in 2022, 2023, and you paid a little more than the list price, and maybe the market's come down 5 or 10%. That's not across the board. It's not every house that's like you just whack off, 10%. It really is neighborhood to neighborhood. Some neighborhoods have become more desirable and the values have gone up. Others have gone more, down more than 10%. So it really just depends. It's a block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood sort of scenario. And without me coming doing that walkthrough with you and really learning about your house, it's hard for anybody to give you a real number of what they think a reasonably educated buyer would pay for your house in this particular market. So get me involved early. Even if we don't end up transacting now, and you want to wait till spring and we list then, that's fine. But at least you have a baseline. At least you know where you are today. So then when we revisit that in January or revisit that in February, we can see if the numbers have changed, if we're getting a little bit better or if things have kind of deteriorated further. And maybe, your personal situation, if that's gotten a little better, maybe you got a promotion when you didn't think you were going to, or maybe the job has been more secure now, or maybe you changed jobs and you're in a stronger job and you're ready to sell this home and buy something else, whatever it is. But let's get me involved early. Let's get that initial consultation done, that initial walkthrough done. If we end up transacting and go to market at this time, great. If we end up holding off until spring or another time, that's okay as well. Or even if you don't list, that's okay as well. At least you have the information. You have that baseline of where you're at. So that is my message to you today. Real estate is alive and well. We're closing plenty of deals, but you've got to do it right. You've got to list your property. You've got to be ready, set, lights, camera, action when you go to have those buyers walk into your home. And we have to do real estate, right? The front of the property, the curb appeal has to be just perfect. You walk in, lighting has to be perfect. The temperature has to be perfect. Everything has to be just, that might be your buyer. And you may only have 1 or 2 showings this week. So we want to treat those 2 showings with respect, that they're going to write an offer if we do it right. And if it doesn't happen this week, well, the next week we do exactly the same thing until we get it sold. We're about 45 to 50 days on market before that happens. So have some patience. Reset our expectations and be ready to do real estate. That's really how it goes for our buyer's market right now for our sellers. If you have any questions about real estate, my phone number is 720-688-5110. I forgot to say, hit that subscribe button. It's either right there or it's right there, but hit that subscribe button if you're on my YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate that. You'll get the next episodes easier that way. Every month, the first Thursday of the month is when they come out. You've been listening to Denver's monthly real estate podcast. This is Ricky Schoonover of 8Z Real Estate, and you've been listening to the Denver Homes Market Report. Thank you very much, and I will see you next year. This is the first Thursday of December, so we'll be right into 2026 on the next episode, and looking forward to that. So have a great holiday weekend or holiday month, however you celebrate, and I'll catch back up with you in January 2026.